Finding real-world bottlenecks with CapFrameX.
Hello and welcome back to episode 2 from our Unity Performance Task Force podcast. I'm Ruben Torres from the Gamedev.guru, and today we're going hands-on with a small but mighty tool that will change how you profile your games from a player's point of view. It's called CapFrameX. It runs on Windows, it captures what your game actually feels like on the machine, and it gives you the metrics that matter to humans, not just engines. In this lesson, I'll walk you through a simple workflow with CapFrameX is how to capture a run, how to read the analysis, why frame time percentiles beat average FPS, how to set targets, and how to use the overlay to spot problem areas in real time. By the end, you'll know exactly where your game stutters and what to investigate next with deeper profilers. Let's dive in. First, what is CapFrameX? Think of it as a game-focused capture and analysis tool for CPU and GPU performance from the player's perspective. It records frame times and gives you player-centric statistics that answer the question, did the game feel smooth most of the time? Here's how to get started. Install and open CapFrameX. Launch your game. In CapFrameX, you'll see a list of running processes and a best guess at which ones are worth profiling. Pick your game's process. For this example, I'll select something like FPS microgame. Now press F11 to start the capture. You'll see a small notice that capture has started. Play normally. When you're done, press F11 again to finish. That's it. You now have a capture. Next, switch to the analysis view. This is where the tool shines because it mirrors what players care about. At the top, you'll see high-level metrics. Forget averages for a moment. Focus on frame time, measured in milliseconds, which tells you how long it takes to produce each frame. Lower is better, but consistency is king. Players don't complain about one frame taking 11 milliseconds and the next taking 12. They complain when one frame takes 11 and the next takes 50. That sudden jump is a stutter. CapFrameX offers a smoothness visualization. Picture a ring that is fully blue when things are smooth. If your game has microspikes, for example while streaming assets or when the garbage collector kicks in, that smoothness ring will show it. You might see something like 99% smooth with a thin slice indicating stutters. That thin slice is what breaks the feel of a platformer mid-jump or throws off a flick shot in a shooter. Below, you'll see the frame time graph. The horizontal axis is time. 0 seconds is when you pressed F11 to start the capture. The end is when you pressed F11 to stop. The vertical axis is frame time in milliseconds. You'll also see a moving average line that helps you spot trends, not just spikes. In my sample run, the frame time hovered between about 10 and 12 milliseconds. That's a good sign. It means the game is comfortably above 60 frames per second during most of this capture, but again, we want to confirm that using percentiles. If you prefer FPS, there's a tab for that too. You'll see the rate swing, for example, between the low 80s and around 100. That's fine for intuition, but remember, frame time tells the truth, especially about stutters. Now let's talk about the most important chart in CapFrameX, the distribution and percentiles. You'll see an L-shaped distribution of frame times and a panel with percentile metrics such as the 95th percentile, the 1% low, and the 0.2% low. These numbers answer the question, how bad are the worst frames that players actually experience? Here's why percentiles matter more than averages. Averages hide pain. You can average 90 frames per second while still dropping to 60 or worse in certain moments. That swing is what players feel. Percentiles expose the tail. The 1% low tells you what the slowest 1% of frames look like. The 0.2% low is even stricter, and I love using it for action games and VR because it focuses on the rare spikes that ruin timing and aim. Let's connect this to targets. Pick a frame rate goal and translate it to milliseconds per frame. 60 frames per second means each frame must be ready in 16.6 milliseconds. 90 frames per second means 11.1 milliseconds. 120 frames per second means 8.3 milliseconds. CapFrameX makes this concrete. Ask, are we below the target frame time most of the time? If you're targeting 60, you want almost every frame under 16.6 milliseconds. If 90 is your goal, then aim for almost every frame under 11.1. In my sample run, most frames land between 10 and 12 milliseconds. The percentiles confirm it. For example, 99% of frames might be under 16 milliseconds. That is a strong signal for a 60 FPS target. But if you see a 1% load that jumps to 25 or 30 milliseconds, that means brief stutters that players will feel in tight platforming and precision aiming. Even if the average looks great, those spikes are the moments people remember. CapFrameX also has an FPS thresholds view. It shows the share of time spent under various FPS bands. For example, you might see that 99% of the time you're under 120 frames per second, or that 1% of the time you drop below 60. If you're targeting 120, that chart tells you how often you miss. If you're targeting 60, a tiny slice below 60 can be fine for many genres, but for VR or competitive shooters, you'll want that slice as close to zero as possible. I encourage teams to watch the 0.2% low as a quality gate. If your 0.2% low meets or exceeds your target, you're in a great spot, even for VR. There is also sensor data for things like CPU load, GPU clocks, RAM usage, and VRAM usage. Treat these as directional hints. Depending on your exact hardware, drivers, and operating system, some readings can be noisy or unavailable. Use them to form hypotheses, not to ship block alone. The real power move in CapFrameX is the on-screen overlay. This lets you play your game while watching the metrics live, instead of recording for 2 minutes, closing the game, and trying to remember which spike matched which scene. To use the overlay, you'll be prompted to install the RivaTuner statistics server. Click the link, install it, then restart CapFrameX. With your game process selected, open the overlay settings and choose the metrics that matter to you. My shortlist is frame time in milliseconds, percentile-based FPS or percentile-based milliseconds, and average frame time. You can try enabling extras such as CPU usage per core, GPU utilization, or even the GPU fan percentage if you're curious. Depending on your setup, some of these will work great and some may not. Now play. As you traverse your levels, watch the overlay. When you load a new scene, fire a particle storm, or walk into a boss arena, check how the live percentile frame time behaves. If your 0.2% low suddenly tanks, you've just found a hotspot. Maybe streaming loads are spiking. Maybe a shader variant explosion kicks in. Maybe the garbage collector runs in the middle of combat. The overlay helps you tie the numbers to the exact moment and place while it's happening. That saves you from the classic problem of recording a long session and then forgetting which dips came from which encounters. A few practical tips. Record long enough to capture typical play. 30 seconds might be enough for a small scene, but a minute or two gives percentiles a better sample. Define your targets in milliseconds before you start and stick them on a sticky note. For example, for 60 FPS, aim for a 1% low of 16.6 milliseconds or less and a 0.2% low as close to that as possible. For 120 FPS, the same rule but with 8.3 milliseconds. And if you're working in VR, be even stricter. Resist the urge to build your own FPS counter. The overlay is richer, faster to iterate with, and already does the percentile math. Play like a player would play. If a particular boss arena or cutscene is notorious inside your team, go there, watch the overlay, and take notes. Once CapFrameX tells you where performance dips, switch tools to figure out why. This is where you bring in your deeper profilers. Use instrumentation-based profilers when you can modify and rebuild, and sampling profilers when you want low overhead or you're profiling a build. The point is to let CapFrameX guide you to the right room in the house before you start taking the walls apart. Let's recap the workflow in one breath. Capture with F11, analyze frame times not just FPS, read the percentiles rather than averages, translate your target FPS into milliseconds, check the thresholds, use the overlay to map slowdowns to exact gameplay moments, and then take those moments into a deeper profiler to root cause the issue. That's the loop. Before we wrap up, here's a mental checklist you can read out loud to your team. 1. Frame time over FPS for truth. 2. Percentiles over averages for feel. 3. Targets in milliseconds, not vibes. 4. Overlay first to find the scene, profiler second to find the function. 5. Optimize where players suffer, not where graphs look dramatic but harmless. That's CapFrameX in a nutshell, and why I consider it one of the most practical toys in the performance toolbox. It gives you the player's view in numbers you can act on without guessing. In the next episode, we'll pick up another tool and build on this workflow so you can go from symptom to fix even faster. Until then, keep measuring, keep it simple, and ship smooth. Thanks for listening, and see you in the Unity Performance Task Force.